The next ingredient Auntie told us to put in the cake was family and fortitude. And I want to introduce you to Marietta Burks Webb. She lived also and adds longevity to this cake. She lived a little over 100 years, and she was maybe what would be like our single mothers today, except she was a single widow who had to face life alone and went back to her family, who welcomed her and her children with open arms. Miss Marietta Burks Webb.
I can't believe it's been 150 years. Born and raised in Drew County, it will be my pleasure to tell you a little bit about myself and what it was like growing up in this small community. Times were tough. My father died at an early age, leaving with my mom to support 7 children with only income from the farm and a small salary she made teaching school. I married James William Webb November 18, 1898. We began our family on a 120-acre farm that was owned by my family in the Bowser community. I remember the big log rolling where, to clear land, the men came out with hand axes to help people move into their new home. Wives and children came with baskets of food and good neighborly love. And the only pay volunteers received was a feast and tall tales to tell. I especially looked forward to the hog killing time. The weather had to be very cold in late November or early December. And we knew we were going to enjoy those good old brains with eggs and homemade biscuits to eat. As did my mom. My husband James died at an early age as well, leaving me with 6 small children and another on the way. Well, I had no choice but to return to my homeland, my childhood home place, to move in with my mom and my brother Guy. Guy took over management of both his home and mine until my sons were old enough to manage. We were a happy family with good relatives, friends, and neighbors to stand by us. And God granted me with a wonderful sense of humor which saw me through many years of hardship. A favorite pastime of mine was telling Bible stories to my children. I would illustrate these stories with eye and face expressions as well as voice tones. And my children would sit on my knee and would hear me tell stories such as David and the Lion's Den, David and Goliath, Daniel and the Lion's Den, and Joseph's coat. I always had a passion for reading, but my Bible reading came first, along with the Zane Grey Western series. I never remarried because I didn't like the idea of another man over my children. As a single mother, I was a very firm, for I taught my children about God and the civil laws of this land. And as I leave here today, I want to tell you one thing that I've cherished in all my years of growing up here in Drew County. Family is important. Remember who you love and stay by them, for it is your family that will remain with you always. Thank you.
Yes, they were neighbors of mine, just south of our place there. And I was also a gentleman farmer, and in those years was doing sharecropping. And so I would let my land out, and one day a sharecropper came up to get some land. He must have been from Kentucky. And I tried to explain to him the way sharecropping works. And I said, well, every time you put 2 loads of corn in your barn, then you put 1 load of corn in my barn. Well, he seemed to understand, and about fall came along, and I never saw the man. So I went and looked him up, and I said, what happened? And he said, well, Judge Wells, I put 2 loads of corn in my barn, and then there wasn't any left to put in your barn. Well, I made sure that the next time I explained sharecropping, I chose my words more carefully. The next ingredient that Auntie said to put in this cake is community involvement. Miss Virginia Virgil Cavanis, a taste of town life. Now, this was the pinnacle of Monticello, Arkansas, where this town was the place to be. We had an opera house, we had hotels, held grand balls, and during these years, one year, Monticello, Arkansas had the highest per capita income of any town in the state. So Miss Virginia Cavanis, known for her good looks, talent, and her community involvement.
make it in time. We just had our annual Colonial Dames luncheon, and I thought that it was never going to end. I even brought some of Miss Debbie's precious apple streusel coffee cakes. I just thought that they were so tasty to waste. Well, let's see, where should I begin? I spent most of my 20s traveling and living in Texas. After my father was killed by a train at the Little Rock Union Station, my mother and siblings were forced to move into town from Montongo. Eventually, my sister Sally, my mother, and I bought a house. Eventually, my sister, my mother, and Sally and I bought a house on North Main Street, where we currently live today. Our home is furnished with many of my paintings. I mostly paint still lifes and watercolors, with watercolors. For instance, I have this beautiful rose-colored salmon which I hang over my sideboard in the dining room. Many mouths have watered over this painting. For instance, Walter Moffat numerous times has commented on the delicious appeal of this particular salmon. I spent also a great deal of my time traveling. In my parlor, I have a cabinet which contains 3 bottles. Each bottle has water from a different source: the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and the River Jordan. Traveling, due to its many limits, can be quite an arduous excursion. I have traveled by train, by boat, and by horse, but no matter which method I choose, the journey is always long and bumpy. But I'm grateful for the many sights and experiences that I have seen. Since the turn of the century, Monticello has been bustling and growing. Us ladies of this town are fighting hard to keep up with her. I mean, a lady's role is based primarily on her civil and religious organizations. Currently, several ladies are working on the Daughters of the Railroad Industry. Next week, they will launch a society for pet lovers. I myself do not have enough time for my current involvement. There are 9 organizations to be exact, ranging from the Daughters of 1812 to the Drew County Library Board. Over the last few months, several of us have been rotating the library in our homes, keeping the books in traveling trunks. However, this is becoming more and more impractical. So, the library board has decided to organize the construction of a real library building. Oh no, I just remembered that I forgot to take the chicken out of the oven. I must go. Excuse me.
Yeah. Are you entering that chicken in the cook-off, Miss Rosa? Oh, keep going. Okay. This was also the time that the first automobile agency came to Monticello. We had an automobile agency before Pine Bluff even did. And of course, it was Studebaker. And there was one man in town who took advantage of the automobile, and his ingredient is determination and longevity. Dr. Wiley Trotter, the first black veterinarian in Drew County, who never had a car but always rode with his clients. He had to go to Canada to get a license to practice veterinary medicine, and he did. And he practiced here for 75 years and lived to be well over 100. The man born in the year of the big snow, Dr. Wiley Trotter.
Thank you, Judge. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Johnny Wiley Trotter, and I just got back from helping a calf that was too small. A heifer that was too small to deliver a calf that was too large. That was one of the most common emergencies that caused farmers to come and get me, no matter what time of day or night it was. Yes, I did say come and get me. Although I was one of the only people to give animal shots, just like Judge Wells said, I never owned an automobile. Farmers would always have to come and get me. And that showed me their dedication for one thing. If they came all the way to get me, wherever I was, then they must have needed me. After I tended to their hog or cow or horse or whatever kind of animal they had, they would always take me back home. And that's another thing. On the way back home, we would always discuss what they owed me. I didn't always accept monetary payments. I would sometimes accept a bushel of beans or a bushel of potatoes or something like that for payment. But just like I brought animals lives into the world, I was also prepared to take lives out of the world. And I can recall a story when I was called out to see about a farmer's sick logging mule. And when I got to the house, I discovered that the logging mule had a large tumor about the size of a cantaloupe on its chest. Well, I looked at the mule and I looked at the family in sort of a sad kind of way, and I asked them, I said, do you folks have a pistol in the house? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but you might as well go and get it for me. And I never intended to use the pistol. I just wanted to adjust the family's expectations. And when they returned with the pistol, I looked at it and checked to see if it was loaded. And I began to walk around the mule all the while fingering that pistol. And I looked at the family and I said, well, since we're going to shoot it, I might as well see if I can save it. And I figured if the operation wasn't successful, they would think, well, we're going to shoot him anyway. But if the operation was successful, they would say, wow, what a great doctor. Needless to say, I performed the operation and the mule lived to work a few more years.
The next ingredient in Auntie's community cake is imagination. Charlie Mae Simon. She outlived 3 husbands, one of which was the only Pulitzer Prize-winning poet of Arkansas, John Gould Fletcher. Charlie Mae wrote children's books, and the Arkansas Children's Literature Award is named after her, Miss Charlie Mae Simon.
Thank you, Judge Wells, for that lovely introduction. I always did my best writing in Arkansas. I simply love this state and love writing about my memories here. One of my fondest memories is of my first garden. I remember the carrots growing and the radishes and the lettuce. It was a lovely garden. It was a time of growing, not only for my garden, but for myself as well. I remember the birds growing too large for their nests and flying away. And the rabbits, I remember the rabbits growing and multiplying. My dog Zozo, he looked upon the rabbits as any other barnyard animal and just simply let them hop right into the garden and have themselves a feast. Well, one night I tied Zozo in the garden thinking at least her presence would keep the rabbits away. But that night there came a violent thunderstorm with lightning flashing and thunder roaring and rain pouring down, kind of like Thursday night. I woke up and went out in my gown to bring her in, and I noticed her long bushy tail was dropped in shame for the only time in her life. For you see, she thought she had been punished, and she didn't know why. Well, from then on, the rabbits shared